Good morning, Dr. D. I'm excited to talk to you about a fairly new topic to me today. We're going to be talking about the intellectual virtue of originality. So let's get started.
Yes, great. And thank you, Kate. It's great to be with you again. And originality, I've actually been struggling with the right term to come up with the idea that a human being, as they go through their world to demonstrate intelligence, has to be able, from time to time, to create structure that doesn't currently exist. And there's a lot of terms for that. You can certainly, talk about things like, at first I was thinking about, somebody that makes, designs music, or somebody that is a sculptor, right? So a sculptor has to work from, a blank with maybe even a square block or something like that, and create it into some type of a sculpture. And so, composer, sculptor, effectuator, originator, all these different terms are kind of there and mixed about, and I don't know which one is the best. But what I'm trying to convey by the concept of originality is that from time to time, we literally are in a place in the world where the right structure is not there for us. So clearly, this is the case when you're an entrepreneur. And an entrepreneur looks at this blank canvas, which is, a venture that might someday exist. It doesn't exist right now. And so, and you can say, well, okay, well, maybe you do a business plan or something like that. But a business plan is certainly not the creation of the structure. The creation of the structure is bringing together resources, including the right people, the right capital, maybe the right kinds of materials to build your product, and then to design, tinker with your product, whatever it might be, and bring it into the marketplace. And there's all these different pieces that you need to bring together. They don't just fall into place because you've written a plan, right? That's not going to happen. Somehow or other, you've got to get away from that plan and say, okay, I have to move out into the world and network and become a part of this causal, what I call the vast causal sea, and bring things together. And so whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you are working in a large corporation or whatever you're doing, from time to time, you're going to need to be original. You're going to need to create structure where it doesn't currently exist. And I think what happens, Kate, and the reason that I emphasize this as a virtue, right, is because I think we all have it when we're young. And we all kind of, when you think about the baby in the crib with the mobile, right, hanging above them, the mobile moves, right, and it attracts the baby's attention. And then they've actually done some experiments where they'll link up like a string from the baby's foot to the mobile, and when the baby moves a foot, it makes the mobile, dance around and move and everything. And the effect that has on the enthusiasm of that infant is amazing, right? When the infant learns that there's a connection between their movement and the distraction or the attention grabbing mobile, they are extremely excited about this, right? And so they're learning that they can make the world do what they want it to do, and it entertains them. And they get extremely frustrated when they disconnect the string from the leg, right? And the baby starts kicking and flailing about, and it doesn't work anymore. Okay. So we have this natural desire to figure out how it is that this mobile body that we have can move about in the world and make things happen and bring things together in ways that are enhancing of who we are. And so I remember giving a talk years ago to a group of aspiring engineers. This was when I was at Arizona State University in the engineering school. And of course, some of the messages that you get standardly when you have these young people sitting in a room, they say, well, try a lot of different things, and you try a lot of different things because you want to find yourself, and I just thought, that message is not quite right. There's something wrong with that. I'm not. So then I thought about it and I said, okay, here's the message that I'm going to give. I said, if you try a lot of different things and you end up finding yourself, I feel sorry for you, because it's like, oh, there I am. That's me. Okay, I'm done. Right. And that's the end of it. I found myself. And so the point is, you don't try a lot of different things to try to find yourself. You try a lot of different things to create yourself. And that's a never-ending, open-ended process, right? So I really hate the idea of finding yourself or coming up with some type of an identity that happens to be something that freezes itself in your life, and you never have an opportunity to expand your identity, to grow the network of people with whom you can interact in an effective and mutually enhancing kind of a manner. So this ability to create, not only in the world, to move about, like I said, create a venture or something like that, but to create yourself on an ongoing basis. And then of course, at the end of your life, to know that you're not finished, that you're not a finished product. And another thing that I do with my students sometimes, I say, on your deathbed, the only regret that you want to have is the regret that you don't live to create tomorrow, not that you didn't create in every day that came before, right? So there's no regret that you didn't engage, you weren't actively trying to make the world a better place, to make yourself a better human being, to expand your range of people with whom you can effectively interact. This is what originality is all about. It's not necessarily having originality as your sole kind of occupation, let's say making money as a songwriter or something like that. Every single human being can enhance their capacity for originality. And that just simply means finding out how it is that you can contribute to the world, and how it is that you can day by day craft a new person out of your own selfhood. That's what originality is in the scheme of the overall intellectual virtues and intellectual character.
Super interesting. So I'm thinking about how this pertains to the K-16 education system. And so I have a little anecdote here. So I've been teaching intellectual virtues to students in Alaska, and also ethnomathematics, which is an emerging field coined by Dr. D'Ambrosio in the 60s. It's really about the math of an interest group or a cultural group. So I had our students go out and do this measuring tree height activity, high school students, right? Basic trigonometry. And I gave them 3 different ways to measure the tree. And one of my students came back right away, came back inside, said he was done. And I was really curious about that. So I asked him, well, how'd you measure your tree? And he said, oh, I didn't like your ways, so I made my own. I hope that's okay. And I was like, that's the goal, right? Like, that's the goal. That is, like, to me, achievement. So I asked him how he did it. Instead of using his 3 methods that he was given, he took Snapchat, just the app, and he made stickers of his principal standing at the base of the tree. How many stickers all the way to the top, and then just multiplied that by, the principal's height. So he used his understanding of ratios and proportions and technology to solve for this, fairly basic problem in a new way. To me, that is originality. That is like creating structure. That is using math to problem solve, rather than memorizing a process, arithmetic or expression, and not having any way to apply that into like a real world setting. So, but I think if I was a different teacher, I might have seen him come back in and had a different assumption, right away from his lack of participation. Or he might not have felt compelled to try to do something different. So I'm curious how you think originality is coming into play or not into play in the K-16 system currently.
Great question. And there's no perfect answer to that, right? So one of the things that Western society has been accused of, and I think rightly so, is that it has fallen prey to what's called methodology, right? So elevating method to the level of dogma, right? And of course, I guess it manifests in what's commonly known as the scientific method, which is by the common people think of that as being something that is ironclad, that in fact scientists follow this particular method. But if you're a nerd like me and you actually studied scientific method as part of your master's degree program in philosophy, you realize that there is no such thing as a sort of single scientific method that all scientists, regardless of their field of study, are going to follow. I mean, if you break it down into create a hypothesis and then test it, okay, well, that's pretty, but that's what we all do. in life. Every single person is doing that. We're creating a hypothesis. Oh, I wonder if there's a Coca-Cola in the refrigerator. Oh, sure there is, right? So what, am I a scientist of, Cokeology? No, of course not, right? So, I mean, problem solving is something that we all do. And I think there's, a growing fallacy in the world. So how do we balance the need for the fact that we have a lot of methods and techniques and procedures in our world today that in fact work pretty well, right? So I certainly don't want people running around saying, hey, I'm going to be creative about whether I want to stop at a red light or not. I mean, that's not exactly something that I'd like to see a lot of people sort of embracing, So clearly there's somewhere where we need to find a balance between learning sort of some of the standard methods of our society, and then yet preserving the capacity from time to time when problems are not being solved in a way that is really inclusive, including a lot of people in the solution, that maybe we need a new way to solve the problem. And you'll go back to the great, revolutions in thinking in our world that we all know about. Copernicus, of course, that he made it clear that the earth goes around the sun rather than the other way around. And that was something that was, unbelievable for people. And if you think about it, what was the real practical implications of that in the time when he discovered that? There weren't many, because for most people, they'd wake up in the morning and here comes the sun and it's going right over the top of us. And, why do we need to think otherwise, that, that's how things are? And of course, over time, we came to realize that there's a lot of benefits to understanding our place in the universe in that manner. Copernicus had to use some persuasive techniques that maybe weren't available to everybody, but over time, his perspective became the one that we sort of adopted. Same thing with Darwin. Darwin comes along and says, it's quite clear to me that, the living species on this planet have evolved from, maybe some primordial soup or something. And, it's been going on for billions of years. And that's why we see so many commonalities across all these different species and so on. And, people, 150 years ago, when he proposed that, were like, oh, yeah, right. So these great moments of originality changed the world and have changed our perspective and give us a lot of new tools to help us better understand how we can flourish as a species on this planet. So we understand that there are these great intellectual moments of revolution where the originality is plain to see for people over a long period of time. But what about those tiny moments in life when you are solving problems originally, or when you're deciding that the path that you're on as a self projecting into the world maybe needs to be adjusted at the margins? How do you do that? How do we kind of manage that? And here's one of the ways that we can maybe begin to see how the various intellectual virtues are integrated with one another. So one of the central virtues, and the central virtue really is reflection, the ability to reflect upon what happens as you make decisions about impacting the world, as you make decisions about what you're going to do. And reflection happens moment by moment, right? It's happening right now as I'm talking to you, snapping my fingers. I can listen, and it's an immediate feedback that I've snapped my fingers and it was probably audible to you as well. And I'm reflecting upon that in the moment, almost unconsciously. But then we can also do what's called conscious reflection, right? Which is to understand how it is that the things that we are doing are impacting our ability to function over the longer run, right? So there's moment by moment adjustments of behavior to make sure that I'm, reaching for this can, I'm picking it up, but that has nothing to say about what kind of character do I want to be in the world. That's diachronic, that's long-term, and I can reflect upon that on a day-to-day basis. So when you're original and you are now inventing a new way to be in the world, clearly the consequences are going to be unpredictable to some extent, right? So, this is where I kind of part with the whole idea of predictive processing, because there are many things that we do that we can't predict what the consequences are going to be. We're just launching ourselves into the world and saying, I'm on the frontier here, and I know something's going to happen. And of course, here's where reflection comes in, because you've made some causal consequences and you think about it. Oh, was that favorable? Was that better than I used to be? Is this going to lead to a better outcomes for me over the long run? And this is the process of learning, right? That's how all learning occurs through reflection, whether it's instantaneous reflection or whether it's more deliberate kind of conscious reflection. You don't learn and change unless you are reflecting on the original kinds of things that you do in life. And so I try to introduce to people the notion of the frontier. And one of the things that I'm seeing in our society today is the lack of a frontier that people can go to. And so they are inventing their own frontier, and they're not doing a very good job of it. And I get that, right? That's the frontier. If you don't respect the current society, you move out to the frontier. And now we're creating a frontier, but it's amongst us. It's right here in our midst. And so it's hard for us to deal with that. So we need to have outlets for that originality. We need to have outlets for people to express their dissatisfaction with the way things currently are in positive ways. And the more we try to hold it down and incarcerate it, and and of course, sometimes you need incarceration when people act up too violently, of course, but we need outlets for it, and so we need to stop constantly assessing whether you're a fit or not, because some people from time to time just need to be original. And the balance is where we have kind of lost track. And I would really like to see K-16 get back to finding a balance rather than trying to get us all to conform to somebody else's view of how we should all behave and believe.
What about implications for companies and organizations? What does that look like when you have an original person move from K-16 into a job setting?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? So people like me become entrepreneurs because we don't fit in anywhere. And that's a rough life. It's hard because sooner or later, you've got to be able to, connect with people. You got to be able to connect with customers. You got to be able to connect with your employees, or, whatever. But you can find a way by connecting with people. And so you find like-minded people, and at the same time, you place guardrails around yourself so that your creativity is channeled in positive directions. You don't know what the outcomes are going to be. When you're an entrepreneur, you're on the frontier. You're on what I call the economic frontier. And you don't know where you're going to go. And you don't know where it's going to take you. And you have no idea whether you're going to be able to make a living at it. But you have no choice. You have to do it. This is your life. And I think we've become a little bit of a milquetoast society to some extent, where people are less inclined to take the risk of entrepreneurship, because we are a very institutionalized society. The research bears that out. America is not the most entrepreneurial country in the world, even though we have some of the greatest entrepreneurs. But on a per capita basis, most people just want to fit in, because that's how they've been trained in the K-16 system. Is I'm going to just channel you into a job, right? And so I'm kind of, as I teach entrepreneurship in higher education, I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm asking you to try a completely different kind of life path. And, and you've got to be ready for that. You've got to be ready to live on the frontier, and, it may not work out, and you may have a very rough life. And most entrepreneurs kind of do, right? But that's, so if we have the positive guardrails for originality can be channeled into positive directions. So how do you do that in the organization? I've been thinking the other day, about a company that I actually worked at as a child. It's Kohler Company, which they make plumbing products. And one of the things that they do in that organization, it's not organization wide, so it's a little bit of a limited experiment, but they have a lot of ongoing innovation inside the company. They invite artists and things in there to design new kinds of fixtures, whether it's sinks or toilets or whatever it might be, bathtubs. They're constantly designing these crazy designs, right? And every now and then one of them is like, wow, that's it. That's the new thing that we have to introduce into the marketplace. So if you want, as an organization, to have a part of your employee benefit plan being holistic, personal development, give people an opportunity to demonstrate their originality. And that can be by bringing in the works that they do, the poetry that they're writing, the creative painting that they're doing on their off hours from work. Have them bring it in and display it in the office where people can look at it and maybe purchase it or whatever, right? But it's an opportunity for people to say, I'm more than just this drone at the office. And I want to share that with people. And I want people to know that that's part of who I am, right? And I think organizations can encourage a little bit more originality by having open spaces like that, where people are able to share that side of their personality and be with people in a way that's not about getting the job done, but rather about being real and authentic. And that was pretty cool.
It's really cool and really timely in the sense of you hear a lot of corporations talking about wanting transformation and leadership.
Yeah.
But also at the same time promoting a really strong sense of workplace culture. So what I see, right, is like they hire somebody innovative, they get brought in, they get absorbed into the workplace culture, and one of two things happens. Either that really innovative person becomes part of the mold to fit in with the culture that exists, or they leave because they've been suggesting so many things that get rejected by the existing culture. So how do you, originality seems, right in line with that, that paradox right now.
And that is the balance, right? So obviously, organization, you got to get the job done. You've got to deliver the product. You've got to, make sure that you're managing costs and all. I get all that, I've done that, but the idea of not just fun, or, sometimes they have like skunk work. So they have a few people that go off and they're able to go ahead and innovate. But what if everybody's got the ability to innovate? Everybody's got the ability to be original. Not all of us are going to be the next Picasso, or the next Leonardo. It's not going to happen. But we have something that we do, right? And it's secret. And it's not something that we typically share with the people in the office because, it softens you. So when people saw me, right, entertaining them about bratwurst, it softened who I am, because when I'm working, I'm focused and I get stuff done, right? And I've got the Medusa stare. But that was different, and it was a different environment. So to create these environments where people begin to understand each other as authentic human beings that have originality as part of their overall personality and character, that changes the culture. And that encourages people that the organization does, in fact, have a place for originality, even though it's not everywhere. There is a place for it, and that's important.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on originality in the K through 16 and the corporate world. Looking forward to connecting again, maybe talking more about intellectual virtues and how they all integrate with one another.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.